We'd like to conclude our coverage of the 7 people, recalling who the 7 people aboard this morning's mission were and what their assignments were. Michael Smith, commander in the Navy, had the role of pilot on this Challenger launch. He was born in 1945 in Beaufort, North Carolina. He became a NASA astronaut in 1980. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. He got an MS degree in aeronautical engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School. Smith flew A-6 intruders and also completed a Vietnam cruise assignment while assigned to attack squadron aboard the USS Kitty Hawk aircraft carrier. He had been awarded the Navy Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 Air Medals, 13 Strike Flight Air Medals, and the Navy Commendation Medal with a V. That's the Navy Unit Citation and the Vietnam Cross of Gallantry with Silver Star for his role in Vietnam. Michael Smith, the pilot of the Challenger.
The 7 crew members of this ill-fated Challenger mission. Christa McAuliffe, of course, was picked to be the first teacher in space some 6 months ago after a nationwide search. It was President Reagan's idea to put a private citizen in the shuttle program. Her husband, Stephen McAuliffe, talked to reporters shortly after the announcement that his wife was picked to be a primary candidate for the NASA Teacher in Space program.
I found out, honestly, nobody here believes this, but it's true. I found out on the radio, like everyone else.
Which station?
Oh, which station? GIR.
Did they call you this morning at all?
No, I think she's paying me back for all the wise comments I've made in the last month or so.
Can you objectively say whether you had a feeling after, I think maybe premonitions might have been high, especially following the fact that she was the first one that NASA interviewed on Monday. Do you think there were any sneaking suspicions that sort of leaned her way?
No, not at all. I think everybody who knows her, I think, honestly thought that, there may have been candidates who were certainly her equal, but that there was nobody that would be superior to her. And we all felt that way, so we all felt that she had a really, really good chance. But obviously you can't say you knew she was going to win, or you knew she was going to be selected. And I wouldn't have been surprised if somebody else was selected because they were all so good.
You said, I guess early today, you were saying that you were the nervous wreck and she was the calm one. Is that in fact true? Was she really calm?
That is in fact true. She was very worried last night that Mike Callahan, my partner, and I were going to be total basket cases and unable to practice law for the next 10 years if she wasn't selected.
Mr. McAuliffe, what were you doing when you heard it on the radio? Were you specifically listening for it, or were you just, was it on and then you heard it and you said, oh, I can't.
Oh no, we turned it on because George Wilson of the Monitor thought he might be able to get an inside scoop on who the selectee was, and he was going to call me. And apparently they really put the silence on that in Washington, and his source wasn't able to produce. So he called me, and we called each other all morning saying, do you know, and not believing either one, I think.
You're looking forward to spending the rest of your life being known as the wife or the husband of the woman who went up in space?
Well, actually, I'm used to it. I've spent my entire married life being known as Christa's husband.
Are you prepared for what this means? I guess she's going to be home. She's going to be away for a year now, or come the flight. And
well, I don't imagine it's going to be a solid year away. I think it's. She'll be away for a long period of time, but I assume we'll be allowed to see her.
Are you ready to assume responsibility for the kids and the whole bit, and the pressures that means on the home life?
I am very ready, willing, and able to turn those pressures over to my mother and my mother-in-law.
This isn't catching the shuttle to Boston. Do you have a
doing, but how can you as a human being turn down an opportunity like that? I certainly couldn't, and I wouldn't expect her to.
Are you asking NASA if they can make room for you too?
If there's a way to get on there, I'd like to hear about it.
Can I just go back to the kids? They're young. Do you think this could have an effect on them to be gone, for long periods of time?
I don't think so. Scott's 8 and Caroline's 5, and Christa's always worked, and she's always made very strong efforts to schedule time that solely belonged to them, and I don't see any reason why she wouldn't continue to do that. Sure, there'll be 60 or 30-day periods where she won't be around, but if the last month or two is any indication, they can handle that fairly well. Especially when they see her on television every other night, they kind of enjoy that.
Have you talked to them yet?
I talked to Scott. Caroline's distracted at the swimming pool up at Concord Country Club, and Scott's at home fielding phone calls.
Are you aware of how excited the city as a whole is about this? I was just out on the street.
You know, that's a great point, because that's one of the wonderful things I think about living in Concord, is that for the last, really since she applied, I think everybody has been so excited and has identified with her so well. And you know, people in the street that you know, they say we're rooting for, and you can see the anxiety in everybody's face. You know, people that she works with and people that I work with, and just people that you see occasionally around town. We're really super, and I'm really happy for that. In fact, she was afraid last night when I was telling her the pressure of the city and the state are on her. And she said she didn't think she wanted to come back if she didn't get picked, that everybody would be downhearted. And I cleverly told her that was true, so she should keep that pressure in mind and do well.
Do you have specific plans in mind that you two talked about if she won? You know, how you were going to work out some of the specifics of house care and...
Only one specific plan, and that is my VMI ring gets to go on the flight.
BMI?
What does that stand for?
What does that stand for? That's the best military school in the United States, Virginia Military Institute.
Do you have anything as the husband of the first woman who's...
I'm laughing because one of my colleagues here went to West Point. He disputes that rather hotly.
Do you have...
But he isn't being interviewed. So.
If it was you going instead, or during the talks that you've had with your wife, has there been any, you know, point of view that you've had, any type of thing you want her to tell people, or any special interest you have in the space program, or what she's doing?
I don't understand the question.
Has there been a specific thing about it that's really excited you?
Oh, sure. I mean, the idea of floating above the Earth free of gravity, my God, yeah, that's, to me, that's unbelievable.
That, of course, was an interview earlier with the husband of Christa McAuliffe, who was one of the 7 crew aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger that exploded at 11:38 this morning, shortly after liftoff from the Kennedy Space Center. It is considered extremely doubtful that the accident was survivable. It is feared that America has lost all 7 of its astronauts, 2 women, a black man, and the other white males who were aboard this mission's flight. It was 19 years ago yesterday that America suffered its worst fatality. It has had, until today, no fatalities in actual space flight. But that was the fire aboard the Apollo Saturn 201, which was the 27th of January 1967, which Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee lost their lives. That wasn't a flight, that was just a test interiorly of the Apollo spacecraft itself. Those men were killed by fire and fumes without ever having left the pad. As we saw this morning, Challenger did make it a minute 15 seconds into its flight, and was some 10.5 miles altitude by the time the explosion overtook it. The Soviets have had differing luck with their space flights. They have lost 3 men on re-entry once when they had a defection in the re-entry vehicle itself, a pressure problem, really probably human error. They failed to close a valve properly. They also lost a man whose returning spacecraft, Komarov, who got tangled in his parachutes coming down. Those are the fatalities the Soviets have mentioned. They've had other close calls, as have we. Nothing, however, like 7 people aboard one craft, because nothing except the space shuttle is capable of carrying 7 people aboard one spacecraft. As we know, as aircraft got bigger, the potential for disaster among them got greater as well. We have seen the sea, which now in the afternoon off the coast of Florida remains serene, strange, as recovery crews attempt to ply it. The wreckage should be some 8 miles offshore if it came straight down. It had tremendous forward as well as upward velocity, however. The craft was at that altitude flying about Mach 3, about 3 times the speed of sound, some 2,000 miles per hour as we count them here on Earth. The velocity would have thrust it up and onward considerably beyond the 10 miles up and the 8 miles out. That's the situation. As we say, we have not had, until this day at any rate, any fatalities in the short history of space flight. Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space for the Soviets, died much, much later in a simple plane crash east of Moscow. Let's go back now to Atlanta. Lois Hart.
Thank you, Reed. H.B. Armitage is with me. He is Director of Flight Operations at Georgia Tech. Thank you for joining us today. As you watched what happened today, I know you were a friend of the commander, Dick Scobee. You must have been horrified.
Absolutely. It was a very terrible experience to know something like this was happening. It's a terrible disaster.
And yet there's no doubt in your mind that the program must go on.
Oh, absolutely. Just like we have airplanes that occasionally explode, like we have a furnace in homes that explode when you have the right combination of fuel, air, and a spark. This can happen in the most sophisticated of equipment ever built. It appears that maybe something of this nature is what happened today.
Yes, astronaut Eugene Cernan has speculated that the containers separating the two kinds of fuels that are used ruptured, causing the explosion. Does that sound right to you?
That's a possibility, yes. But we have no information at this point to really verify anything.
He also says there is a procedure for the shuttle to separate from the boosters once there is a crisis, but there wasn't enough time in this case. Can you explain how that works?
Well, I can't explain the exact details of the separation, but whenever you have something as large as the shuttle, it takes, because of the inertia effect, it takes time for the shuttle to separate from the booster packages, or the booster packages separate from the shuttle. And this cannot be done in a matter of an instant. And frequently, when you have an explosion of this type, the crew may have only had 1 or 2 seconds notification that this was about to happen, and you just can't react that fast.
So you're saying that given enough warning, it could have been maneuvered away. How much warning?
That's difficult to answer also. Yes, if given enough warning, is a strong probability that the boosters and the shuttle could have separated and not caused, if that's what caused this one.
Does it bother you that there was a delay this morning that had to do with a fire alarm?
It's very difficult at this point to say that that had anything to do with it. In fact, we would all be just guessing at this point. Anytime you have mechanical problems, sure, it bothers us, whether it's an airplane or shuttle or whatever. But at this point, I think it's way too early to speculate.
And the cold weather. This is something new for NASA, too, isn't it?
Yes, but I don't think the cold weather really had anything to do with this type of thing.
Will we ever know what happened? Is there the equivalent of a black box on a shuttle?
Oh, yes. And I think, without a doubt, they probably will know in time, but it will take considerable investigation. It will take time, and it will take a lot of development and a lot of work to determine just what happened.
H.B. Armitage from Georgia Tech, thank you for joining us. And we return now to Tom and Tyr in our continuing live coverage of today's shuttle disaster. Tom?
Thank you, Lois. The picture you see behind me is off the shore of the Kennedy Space Center. As search efforts are underway, they did not start for 55 minutes after the explosion because NASA says continuing debris was falling, making it impossible to move those rescue efforts into the area. We have seen a Coast Guard cutter moving across the shore about a half hour ago, but not heading in the direction of space. Let's now go to Utah Senator Jake Garn in Washington.
We have Senator Garn, who is being placed behind the microphones, Tom, in the Senate gallery. Senator, can you hear me this morning yet, sir?
Well, it's very difficult for me to talk about it because these were my friends. Mike Smith, the pilot, was my mother hen the first month that I trained. They assigned him to me, go to my classes and help brief me. And I don't know of any time that I have been more shocked or more moved than when my first wife was killed in an automobile accident. And so it's been very, very difficult for me this morning.
What does this do to the space program here and its support on the Hill, Senator?
Well, I have great confidence in the space program. I think it's a remarkable system. And I think we should push ahead after we have determined the cause. Obviously, we should not fly until we have determined the cause of this particular failure. But I think we need to look at all of the successes, the remarkable safety record that the space program has had, the benefits that come from it, and the crew members that I knew so well. I would expect that they would want us to go ahead with the space program after we have gone through the proper investigations and analysis and know what happened.
How should we go about investigating this?